Welcome to Age of AI, Politics, Law, and Society, hosted by Medlir Mema, Chris Lamont, and Young Diogenes, in association with the Global Governance Institute in Brussels.
Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Medlir Mema, and today we have a truly special guest, David Moss, Chief AI Officer at Make.org. Make.org, together with Sciences Po, Sorbonne, and CNRS, have joined forces to launch the groundbreaking AI for Democracy, Democratic Commons Global Research Program, an ambitious effort for harnessing AI to strengthen democratic participation, civic engagement, and institutional transparency. In today's episode, beyond exploring the Democratic Commons Initiative, David and I will dig into other urgent questions like, can AI counter the forces that erode democratic legitimacy? How do we ensure AI is a tool for empowerment, not control? And as authoritarian regimes weaponize AI for mass surveillance and social control, what are democracies doing to keep up? David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm excited to have you on, and I got to know more about your work and Make.org through a series of surveys and consultations and focus groups over the course of 2024. So let's tell our listeners first a little bit about Make.org and the Democratic Commons initiatives and some of the work you've done recently.
Well, maybe we start with the Democratic Commons Initiative because sure. I think it's the most relevant. And I love to tell the story of how we reacted when ChatGPT entered the world. And our first reaction was, oh my God, it would be a nightmare for democracy because it was the open road for easy fake news generation. We still had in mind the Cambridge Analytica scandal and said, oh, it will be so worse because now you can just have Donald Trump calling you personally and give you new personalized deep fake and a call that just is so perfectly suited to what you think and to try to convince you. And actually, this materialized because in the US, 30,000 people get a phone call from Joe Biden telling them, oh, do not vote in the primary. It's useless. It was a deep fake, of course, and made by a Democrat to demonstrate the danger of generative AI. So the first reaction was a bit of fear, and we actually started a lobbying initiative to gather as many people in the field as possible to provide guidelines to help government to secure election against AI. And it's now part of Ursula von der Leyen's program in the European Union. It's called the Democratic Shield. And actually, many of the measures like the code of conduct for the party, better surveillance of deepfake during election period, and so on and so forth are now in place at the European level. But the second reaction after fear was, okay, maybe it's also an opportunity for democracy.
That's right.
And the Democratic Commons is born from there. Is, okay, can we leverage AI for good and for democracy? And we were thinking, okay, maybe with AI we can break some barrier to participation and just scale participation even more than we were doing before generative AI. And we saw three avenues where AI might help. The first one is with AI, you can now summarize any complex information and better inform citizens. So all the problems that we are facing in society now are complex. Climate change is complex, AI is complex, geopolitics is complex, European Union is complex, everything is complex. And you have a lot of information about it, but where is it? It's in hundreds of web pages, it's in long reports, it's in long videos, and nobody has time to consume all of this. But now you can put all the relevant documentation about a subject in AI and ask questions about it. And suddenly, instead of reading or watching too many content, you can just ask questions and just get info at your own pace, starting where it matters the most for you. And we already built the first platform to do so. It's called Panoramic, and we use it for city to track the work of a citizen assembly, for instance. So it's very powerful. First, you can better inform citizens. Once you have better informed citizens, maybe the citizens want to be chill, they want to voice their opinion. But we are not equal when we try to express their opinion, and we can now envision the AI coach that help you to express your opinion better so that everyone is equal and suddenly every voices are equal as it should be in democracy, actually. So that's the second barrier to participation that is lowered, that everyone can now express himself very well. And we are starting a new platform that is leveraging that possibility. And the third thing is we all love citizen assembly. We think that deliberating, speaking with people who do not share your opinion is very good experience for democracy, because democracy basically is trying to find out how we live together while we do not think the same way. So we have to discuss with people of different opinion. And if you want to do it in a constructive way, usually you're the facilitator, and usually it's a human. But now that we have conversational AI, can we have conversational facilitators for them? So that's the three main avenues that we are envisioning. And the democratic common is about building platform, leveraging these possibilities. But it's also a research program. And why? Because we are using generative AI, but these are just big black box. And even the best AI scientists in the planet do not know exactly what they are capable of or what might go wrong. And so the question is, okay, we want to use the power of AI for democratic use, but is it safe? Do AI have political opinion? They have. They have one. You have been proven that OpenAI is leaning left and liberal, for instance.
That's right.
Can we trust Grok to summarize a debate on open speech on the internet? Would you trust DeepSeek on a debate to summarize a debate on Taiwan, for instance?
Right.
Maybe not. So we need to assert if the AI will use, and we'll try to use open source AI, of course, rather than proprietary one, but can we trust this AI when we ask them to summarize debates, when we ask them to facilitate debate between peoples? And the democratic common is all about it. So we partner with political scientists and AI scientists. The political scientists will try to answer the question, okay, how should AI behave when we use them in a democratic role? And the AI scientists will try to measure this bias and try to fix them in open source model. And that's why we partner with Sciences Po and the Sorbonne.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I have a lot of questions, but I just want to start with a quick one. And that is, what actual programs are you implementing right now? And what are some of the first results that you have seen come out of that?
So the first platform is a panoramic platform. It's because it's the first usage of AI that you have everywhere. So RAG system, basically. So you can ask questions to an AI about a set of documents. And we used that we had in mind a citizen assembly first. So in France, we had a citizen assembly of end of life, about end of life. And so we check all the debates, we put them into the AI, and you can ask questions to it. And then because at Make.org, what we do is we are able to reach out to a massive number of people. We just run campaigns on social networks, and we bring 10,000 people on the platform, and we are looking at how they interact with the platform. And so we first learned that people just love to interact with it. 50% of the people who arrive on the platform actually interacted with the platform. So that's the first good result. And of course, we log all the questions and the answer of the AI so we can look at what the people are asking. And so we learn that people are not only asking about the debates, they are also asking questions about the process. How does the citizen assembly work? How do you choose the citizens that participate? Also about the impact. What is the next step? Or will all this work be used? They ask questions sometimes, very technical questions about some medical solutions or sedation or ethical issue for medical staff, this kind of thing, and maybe about people who participate, who were the experts involved, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting to see what are the questions that people ask. And the other thing we also learn is that it's not that easy to build an AI system that answers correctly to the citizen. And because in the early days of generative AI or of ChatGPT, because generative AI is older, but early days of ChatGPT, it seemed that you can just give any documentation to the AI and it will answer correctly. And in fact, that doesn't work.
Correct.
And we learn the hard way that you have to provide a lot of context to the AI in order to have a proper answer. So we invest a lot and we spend a lot of time just not only prompt engineering, but adding information, adding meta information to documents, explaining the document base to the AI in order to have meaningful results. And actually now we have very good results, but it took us a year to get there.
Right. And is this limited just to France, or is this throughout Europe? How accessible is this to people that may want to use the same platform in their particular political context?
Okay, so the next thing is with the generative AI, you get translation for free. But not really for free, because nothing is really for free, but it's way easier than before. So we are a European company. We are based in Paris, Brussels, and Berlin. So we already run projects in France, in Europe, and in Germany. in Germany for the latest German election. In Europe, we covered an event that is not very well known, but it's called the European Conference. It's a day organized by the Committee of the Region in the European Union, and it's about political communication. And so you can just go online and ask questions about the journey, what had been said, what were the main topics covered in that event. And we are working now on making sure that the AI can answer in your language, whatever the question you ask, whatever language you ask the question in. And it requires some also prompt engineering and trial and error to get there, because it doesn't work usually as expected, but with a strong prompt, we managed to actually get free translation from the AI. So the next panoramic that we'll set up at the European level will be multilingual.
Okay. Now, so much of what you're talking about is about citizen engagement, and these platforms enable citizens to come and talk to each other. People may be a little bit concerned about the level of AI literacy required. And just a broader question, not just with regards to the Democracy Commons, but just generally, what level of AI literacy should we expect from citizens in a functioning democracy in the age of AI, where AI is now everywhere? Should everybody go out there and get a data science degree? I mean, should we have different expectations about our citizens now in democracies?
That's a very good question. I think it's key. Not everyone has to become an AI scientist, but I think that we need a minimum of AI literacy. And the first thing people have to learn is you shouldn't trust AI. Never. And it's strange because when you run a poll and you say people, oh, do you trust AI? Many people say, no, we don't trust AI. But when you see what people are doing, they believe whatever ChatGPT is saying. and you shouldn't ask ChatGPT for information ever. It's not meant to do so. You can try to do so, but you cannot verify what it's saying. It doesn't reference the sources. It's awful. So in our platform, for instance, what we do, we ask the AI to justify every claim it makes with a source and a link to a source. And you have service online like perplexity.ai that is doing just so. That's when I'm looking for information, I don't use ChatGPT. I use Perplexity because it's a search engine, and then the results are summarized by AI, and it justifies everything. And even that AI is hallucinating sometimes.
Right.
So you have first to ask the AI to justify its claim, and you have to check from time to time. So you don't take for granted everything a human says to you. You say you have to justify your claims. We should have the same expectancy against AI, and we should teach people to just have this cautious approach to AI. It's a powerful tool. It's very helpful. I'm using it all the time. But you have to be careful that it's so easy to believe AI. They are built to be believable because they provide the most credible answer by definition. So we should teach people to be cautious, but that should be enough. Just ask the AI to prove what it says.
Okay. Well, here's another kind of dimension of that particular question. And there's been your platform and others using hive intelligence, right? Intelligence to the crowds in a way, have used AI to help identify areas of consensus among thousands of participants in public consultations. And this, at least in my view, leads to a more productive policy outcome. It's not a 0-1 type of outcome, but you try to identify where the crowd's sentiment in a way is. And so then you identify common problems and also common preferences. Could AI systems, I mean, is this an example of how AI systems could actually improve democratic deliberations by helping us perhaps process more diverse viewpoints or moderating contentious discussions? What are you finding?
Clearly, AI can help summarizing things and making sense of a large quantity of deliberation. So whenever you run a huge deliberation in France, we have a grand débat. So hundreds of thousands of people participate. France just liberated the cahier de doléances, so people went to their city hall and just write down proposals. And this has been digitalized and it's now open to analysis. And it's very hard to make sense of all of that manually. Mm-hmm. AI can help. In our experience, you should be cautious too, because when AI summarizes, it can just sometimes overlook some topic, can make some grouping that are not relevant. And in our experience right now, when we use the best algorithm available, half of the cluster or ID they make is not relevant. So what we do at Make.org, we just have a human in the loop approach. Okay. So it can start with human, and like the human start with a sample, and then we ask AI to replicate it. Then we check the AI and we iterate. Or it can start with AI providing a first draft of what's happening because we want a quick result. Then the human has reviewing, correcting it, and maybe use the AI to actually make the analysis evolve. But what we shouldn't do is just ask an AI to run the analysis and take it for granted, because this is when you can have massive misinterpretations. And once more, one thing that was difficult, for instance, in the clustering pace, whenever you do an analysis automatically with AI, it makes you cluster, so group of statements, group of IDs, and it was hard to find a label, a title for it. And now generative AI can generate a title, and it always generates a good title. It doesn't mean that the title is relevant to all the documents in the group. It doesn't mean sometimes it just represents half of them or the first few documents.
That's right.
So it's very dangerous. And if you just look at the title, oh, that's wonderful. It's so clear. It's so meaningful. Yes, but it's actually not a good summary of what's inside.
That's right.
So once more, I think we need to always take this human in the loop approach. And what we're trying to build at Medlir is the tool to actually make sure that the human can verify, challenge the AI, and maybe use AI to improve it, but at least to control what the AI is producing.
So there are a couple, as you talk about human in the loop, these are conversations about autonomous weapon systems too, right? And one of the things that we naturally run against there, and I suspect it's similar to also what perhaps you're finding, is the problem of explainability. This discussion about human in the loop gives you the illusion, at least, that somehow we can actually make sense of what AI is producing. You point out that there are thousands and thousands of comments and feedback that's coming from people. Even if there are human in the loop, we can try and ascertain that what we're seeing, at least as you said, the title and the content match. But the way that we came to that content comes about because of AI's ability to summarize, again, thousands of other documents. So does this human in the loop conversation serve as a comfortable kind of illusion? And I'm sorry, I'm pushing back on this a little bit, that somehow we are in control. Don't worry, we get it. Are we deluding ourselves, in fact, when we say that, as long as there's somebody there, we've got AI under control? And I have a follow-up to that, but maybe this is a big enough question, perhaps, initially.
The generative AI is a big black box. It
right.
was already the case with previous AI algorithm, and this human in the loop and explainability issue was already there before, but with neural networks and so many layers, nobody can claim it understands what's happening. Actually, most of the research in AI is about discovering what the AI can or cannot do, what is doing well. And you speak of delusion, you can ask the AI, how did you manage to get to that result? But it will provide you with an answer. It will describe a reasoning. It's maybe not at all what is happening inside. It's just a plausible answer. So the risk of delusion is there. The approach there are solutions to actually evaluate black box solutions. And it's not based on trying to understand what's happening inside. It's just trying to understand the output. And sometimes also for explainability, one of the approach was you can change the input and see the output. So that's how we, at some point for the early stages of AI, when we were trying to identify animals on picture. And some people discovered that, in fact, when we recognize white bear, you were recognizing eyes and not the bear. And because it's when you make the background disappear that the going was failing, and not when you remove the animal. So there are approaches, and I think we should apply the same approaches for generative AI. And for instance, you say there are a lot of documents. You cannot read all of them because then it's why you use AI. Of course, you can't do that. What you can do is you can add a small sample. And if a sample is good, you can extrapolate and say, okay, everything is good. And usually it's enough to detect the big mistakes.
Okay.
So there are statistical approach to do so.
We've been talking about the black box approach to this, and I guess I want to continue this conversation a bit longer. Some have suggested that a black box kind of algorithm making decisions that affect citizens' rights is fundamentally incompatible with democratic governance. We have this very challenging reality where open AI models are in authoritarian regimes and closed AI models, not all of them, of course, we have a lot of open AI, in Europe as well, and of course, the United States. But the dominant ones, the closed ones, are actually the United States. How transparent? I mean, should we insist on explainability? Should we insist on ways to open up the black box? So how transparent should algorithmic systems be in democratic contexts?
That's a good question. First, I would like to differentiate explainability and transparency.
Sure.
So even an open source model is not explainable. So I challenge you to explain me why Llama is providing an answer, but it's not easy. But of course, it's better to have a transparent algorithm because at least you need transparency about the training sources, data sources, because then researcher can look for bias there. So for democracy and for the democratic uses in general, open source model with open source data and transparency about the training data set and the training mechanism used is very important. You say that the Chinese model is open source and the US one is
called the DeepSeek version of it, at least.
Yeah, the DeepSeek version is. But actually, there is all these open source model with thanks to Meta, actually, which are based on Llama, and it's a worldwide effort. And thanks to Meta, it was a surprise to me that it comes from Meta. We have a very vibrant open source research for AI, and that's a good thing. So we should strive to use open source model. I think transparency is key. And regarding your question is, should we trust black box model for important decision? I don't think so. No, but you can have statistical confidence in models. So you can, if you have training set, I'm a data scientist, you can say, okay, you can trust that model up to a certain level, but that even human institution or human decision are not also some 100% trustable. That's why we have a justice system, we have appeal court, because even a judge can be wrong. And I think we should apply the same rule here. The more important the decision, the more explainable it should be. But we can use AI for low risk or low impact thing and with a cautious AI result, as I said before.
That's very helpful. So here, I mean, you're in France and in Paris, we had in February of 2025, the French government hosted everybody at the Paris AI Action Summit. And there were a lot of discussions there, obviously, about how we use AI. And it was an action summit rather than a safety summit. So there's a lot of emphasis in innovation and openness rather than just kind of stifling it. How can democratic governments reassert sovereignty, right, on some of this without stifling innovation? Here's a follow-up question to that. But should AI systems that influence democratic process be treated as public utilities with special regulatory frameworks? So this kind of escalates a little bit the stakes, I guess. But maybe addressing the first one, in this conversation between technology and democracy, what can democratic governments do to reassert sovereignty without stifling innovation?
That's a very good and broad question.
Yes.
Regarding the regulation, I think the approach of the European Union is good. Like they are trying to adjust the regulation to the risk is a good approach. So there are domains that are too risky even to go. And the compliance to regulation, we ask you compliance if you are in a more risky use case. So if you are taking a life or death decision, you will have a high regulation framework. And if you are just, it's an AI for fun in a game on your phone, maybe we don't mind. There's another distinction in the new AI Act that is coming between big companies and small companies. I prefer it to see at company that affect a lot of people and company that affect a little number of people, because you can be 5 and have a huge impact. But if you don't affect many people, maybe it's not that of an issue. And usually innovation starts small. So when you are in the early stage, it's more open, you might try more things, and then you start having success, your regulation increases, and then you have money to do so that's fine. But regarding sovereignty, that's something else. And I think that you cannot declare sovereignty by law. Sovereignty is about making our own models, our own industry that fits and promote our values. So the Chinese government is promoting their own AI ecosystem. The US is doing so, and Europe is a bit lagging. And at some point, if we want European value in the AI world, we should have just AI companies and we should have AI models. So in France, we have Mistral.
Right.
There are some money that can be promised at the AI summit that should try to build an AI ecosystem in Europe. And I think that's the best way to promote our value. In the end, so many decisions are taken at so many levels when you build an AI system, but it's better that if it's built in Europe with European people of European value within the European regulatory framework. That's the best way to ensure that actually it follows European values.
And the question that I asked, I know this is a little bit off the wall, but there are some cases where, again, this question of public utilities, to the degree that AI influences democratic processes, should we treat these models as public utilities with special regulatory frameworks?
I really believe that at some point, base model for generative AI, model should be somehow public, or at least there should be some public alternative. But at least in public institution, in public setting, you can use public AI. One thing also that is important is right now, most of the research happens in private companies behind closed wall. And the public researcher that actually funded the revolution, because all the research underlying generative AI had been funded by public research. And it's only become private when it was working. These researchers do not have a means to compete. And this saddened me a lot. And I would really love to have some kind of public effort to help the public researcher to actually compete equally with the big guys and to create a public AI. And the second part of the question was about special regulatory framework. Right. I think that the regulatory framework should be the same for everyone, but it's most likely, but I'm sure that the public AI will follow it better than a private.
And this would be a risk-based approach, right?
Yes,
this is kind of what you're suggesting. Let's switch gears just a little bit, and I want to come at some point to the elections, because we've had the elections for the last year and a half, this 3.5 billion people, and so I just want to have the conversation. But before I get there, a quick question on the relation between authoritarian regimes and democratic regimes. And I think this will spill into that conversation about elections. Generally, we see authoritarian regimes using AI for mass surveillance, predictive policing, and disinformation at an unprecedented scale. Democracies, on the other hand, they're struggling with balancing civil liberties with AI governance. Predictive policing is being used. We know that also for criminal sentencing. Compass, for example, in the United States is used as well. The European Court of Human Rights is suggesting perhaps using AI to process through some of the paperwork and everything else with that. But can democracies realistically out-innovate autocracies when it comes to AI uses and governance as well? Or do the inherent constraints of democratic systems put them at a disadvantage vis-a-vis autocracies?
I think that what we should do is make democracy more resilient, and AI can help. So the thing is, we are weak now because our democracy are a bit weak, because we have all democratic systems that rely on gatekeepers that do not exist anymore. So a long time ago, if you wanted to promote ideas, you have to go to a journalist, and the journalist has some ethic and was responsible before the judge if he promote fake news. So this gatekeeper just keep things under control, more or less. It was also used for propaganda. So we have the same democratic versus totalitarian issue, but it was more or less under control. Internet opened up all of this, and it was wonderful because we wanted to get rid of gatekeeper. But now there is no responsibility anymore. And so I think it would be very hard to regulate the internet. People will keep saying whatever they want in so many places that you cannot hope that no one will ever generate a fake news. But it won't be, but you can try to prevent it being viral, not because you stop for fake news, but just because the people become resilient to it. So what we should build, we should empower citizens to be better resistant against fake news. And how to do so? That's why we are promoting deliberative democracy. We think that if citizens get more used to consider complex issues, the fact that for any topic you have multiple opinions, the solution is complex, they become more resilient to simple solutions that characterize fake news and propaganda. And I think that AI can help because, as I said, with AI you can have better informed citizens, you can have citizens that think better, that express themselves better, and that speak with each other better. And this can create some kind of resistance toward manipulation and the simplification of the world that is now promoted by the platform. So we can also ask the social network platform to change a little bit the algorithm, not to promote the most hateful or the most sensationalist content. There are new algorithms like bridging algorithm that promotes content that is speaking to everybody and not to a niche, and trying to avoid to promote too much fake news. But the best resistance is better citizen, better formed. And AI is also a fantastic coach. So we can envision a good citizen coach for citizens that can help them check for fake news, to train them to have resistance reflex, the technical pre-bunking that can maybe deliver pre-bunking before an election, so that we become more resistant. And I think that's the way to go. We should, with better citizens, we'll have better democracy.
Well, on that, as I was hinting earlier, I think Argentina was the first AI election, I think in September of 23. And then since then, we've had, again, almost half the world's population go to the voting booths. I remember a couple of years ago, right as this wave of elections was coming, the World Economic Forum released a report on threat perception. What are the greatest risks that the world leaders and CEOs and others expected in the coming years? And I think number 1, number 2 in that list was AI, misinformation, disinformation, and election outcomes. As you look back, what are the lessons learned over the last year and a half? Have we seen evidence that, in fact, AI is impacting election outcomes? I'm not talking about polarization or other things, but are we seeing AI actually having an impact in election outcomes? And if yes, what do you think is happening? And if no, why not?
Yes, we have evidence. It's already happened. I will give you a couple of examples, but it's as impactful as we think.
Okay.
The most impactful example is Romania.
Mm-hmm.
So in Romania, they just canceled an election because the candidate appeared out of nowhere on TikTok. It was held by Russian bot, and they have to cancel the election because so many bots were generating content, and bots nowadays are powered by AI. Maybe it was the first AI influenced election that had been cancelled. We have seen use of AI to promote disinformation. It's usually used by the extreme. In France, for instance, it was mostly the Rassemblement National, so the far right, that was usually to generate campaign visuals to display things that do not exist, like the migrants are arriving on beach in France. It has not happened. Also in Italy, you have some campaign against what we call the woke, and you have a guy who was pregnant, for instance, on a photo, and he said, "You're not Italy, and you have a nice family, a dad, a mother, and two kids, and it's more Italian." So you have some proof that people are leveraging AI to create content and to try to influence elections. So it boosts techniques that were already existing on social network, but it's now on steroid. But even if elections have been disturbed by AI, unless in Romania it didn't change much. And there was a paper, I think by Stanford, that showed that it was not much AI that was disturbing election, but just standard campaign technique and destabilization technique like astroturfing.
Yeah, so that has been, David, I asked this question because that has been my experience. I've been following news on elections for the last year and a half too. And even in Argentina, right, there was a lot of posters clearly created by AI, generated by AI, the types of pictures or even videos. And people don't seem to accept it. They don't seem to buy. I mean, they understand it. They see it. It's there. And it seems, I mean, one of the impacts that AI is having is the AI bots. And so you have a lot of it now, as you said, on steroids. And so everybody is perhaps being exposed to that. But I've been looking for the smoking gun. I've been looking for the evidence that says that as a result of all this, we have a different outcome than we would have had otherwise. Now, the Romania case is interesting because with the elections being canceled, of course, in Romania, and it'd be interesting to dig into that and look at that TikTok. But I mean, even there, I have my suspicions that there has been this anti-establishment kind of wind that's been blowing for the last 2 years. And so it is not clear to me that this is just an AI-induced type of hype about this candidate, or whether, in fact, the people are just in a mood to kick out the current government, the establishment, and they tend to go with more extreme candidates. We saw that. I mean, even in India, where Modi actually used AI to his favor, he ended up losing seats rather than favor. So there seems to be this anti-establishment sentiment, and that may explain some of the displacement and election outcomes. I guess if you were to guess, I mean, without getting too, not in the fine prints, but if you were to guess, why is it that perhaps AI is not having as much, let's just say it that way, as much of an impact on election outcomes as the fears that we had a couple of years ago that in fact it would have? Is there anything going on there that you think?
Yeah, I think that technology are never good or bad. And elections are complex, and human society are complex. I have a PhD in economics, so I know that human systems are very complex to predict. So it's very hard to say that one technology will have a certain impact and always the same everywhere in every context. What is clear, we have smoking gun evidence that AI is used to try to manipulate elections.
Right.
It makes it easier and more powerful for people who want to disturb election. It's easier to do with generative AI than it was before, and people use it. And we have to be prepared for it, but it will never be only one way.
Okay. Well, because we're also out of time, but I appreciate, I think, that kind of complex and answer to that. Here's, as we wrap this up, if going back to where we started with the Democratic Commons, if we look 10 years ahead, what does success look like for initiatives like the Democratic Commons? What is the moonshot vision for AI and democracy that you hope you can achieve and others can achieve?
That's also a very good question. The first thing is what we are trying to build with the Democratic Commons is to create a kind of democratic score for LLMs. And hopefully in 10 years, every new LLM that will be produced, or new AI, because it will be a new generation, it won't be LLM anymore, will be scored against democratic principle to make sure that it's safe for democracy. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, it's a second leg of a program that will have built resilience against this information manipulation, because thanks to AI, we have empowered citizens to participate more into collective decision, and so they will be more resistant to attacks because they will understand the complexity of the world, and they will be able to make up their own mind and not fall for the first disinformation campaign that came in their social network.
Okay, well, thank you, David. This has been a fascinating conversation. Where can listeners learn more about your work, and how can they get involved?
So you can go to the Make.org website, of course, and learn everything about what we are doing. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we are more active, where we share news about all the campaigns that we are running, and also all the news about the Democratic Commons program.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, David. And thank you again for joining us today. And a big thank you to our listeners. Please join us again next time for another discussion at the intersection of law, society, and politics. Until then, stay human.